Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about projects that I've built so far this year. This year the theme has been Python and AI. I switched to our Python team in January, so a lot of it has been upskilling and then also just, working with Python in general. Okay, so before I do that though, I want to kick off this thing and it'll run in the background and it'll progress as we go. But there's this thing called Claude Code. I recommend you read about it. You watch videos. It's expensive. It's $100 a month. But personally, I'm very committed into putting money to upskill myself in kind of any AI tool that is available. And I'd rather put $100 into this, and then I would cancel Netflix and Spotify, and because that's $30 right there, probably more. Yeah, because Netflix is 20 something now, right? And then Spotify is 15. Anyway, yeah. So I remove these other things that kind of I spend time on, and then I'm okay, I can justify spending $100 on working with this tool and whatnot. So anyway, that's the way I think about it. But $100 is expensive, right? So it is Claude essentially running in your terminal, and it works against a project that you have, right? So here I have a project. This is actually the latest project that I'm working on for work, and I want to just try it out. So the way this works is you provide a Claude.markdown file with some instructions, very similar to how you can provide a custom instructions.markdown for GitHub Copilot. And I have here some instructions on best practices for Bicep code. So here are some, Copilot already completed for me. Here are some best practices for writing Bicep templates. Use these as a guide. Perfect. And here we're just going to say my Bicep code. Okay, so what's going on is I have these custom instructions for Claude. And what I'm going to say is, can you look at all my Bicep code in my infra folder and tell me what needs to improve / change so it follows best practices. Okay, practices. Okay, so I'm gonna let this run. Essentially, this runs in the terminal. You can be doing other things, right? And we're gonna let that go. Now, one other thing that I want to kick off before we do the rest of this video is there's also GitHub Agent, which this thing is so cool. It's so cool. So what do you do is I have my Azure Resume repository open here. I'm going to open an issue and saying update readme. And then I'm going to say here, I have made some code changes since my last readme update. Can you look at all my files and make sure my readme is still up? And make any updates necessary to update to my readme. And I can also say something like use emojis and have a table of we'll do table contents on the top. Okay. So then I can create this issue, and then I can assign, click here, Copilot. And then it says here, assigned Copilot. And now what we can do is Copilot reacts with this little eye emoji, and then it goes and does its work, which I think is it's so freaking neat. Okay, so right now, just so you understand what's going on here, is we have Claude working in the terminal, looking through my Bicep code for one project, and then I have GitHub Agent working on my README and my documentation on another project, and then I'm gonna talk about all my other projects in this video. Okay, so at the beginning of this year, you can tell I've been pretty locked in this year. Here's my contribution graph. I've been sort of obsessed with making sure I have a decent amount of green squares compared to not green, empty squares here. But at the beginning of this year, it was all about Quizlet. That was I wanted to build something that was fun And 2, it was like relevant to things that I find interesting. And 3, it would help me learn Python, right? So Quizlet, if you haven't taken a look at it, it is a quiz app. And it is, it quizzes you on your CLI skills, right? Essential Linux commands on Debian-based systems. And you go through, write your name here. So for example, my name is GPS. And then it prepares your quiz and it gives you questions. Now, what I like about this is it looks really nice and it's a very simple implementation, but I learned so much in this one. And the biggest thing was fast API. We'll go to the source here. Understanding how to model things correctly, how to use pedantic models, and then how to route things correctly, right? So I have here my quiz and here I have all my endpoints, and then making sure that these things also correctly worked with the HTML, making sure the HTML was getting the correct information, and middleware, setting up okay, course you have here. Oh, how do you correctly implement error handling, and how do you correctly get this information into Azure Monitor? Oh, session stuff was kind of a pain too, because one person will go have a quiz, go through a quiz. That's a session, right? You got to make sure that you save that information somewhere too. I think I used Cosmos DB for this. I'm pretty sure. Oh, and just getting the HTML to look kind of decent was a pain too. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with this project. I haven't updated it in a bit, but it being the first project that I made this year, it was pretty good. Pretty good one there. But no AI in this one. January, that was January. And then February, I spent doing 2 different things. I spent upskilling a lot for AI related things. And then I also built one of these templates here. So we have this thing called AZD, which is an Azure Developer CLI, and it lets you deploy templates, bicep templates, I think Terraform now too, to Azure, right? So you do AZD up and then it deploys your template. The thing about creating templates is it's a lot of bicep, and the actual programming that you do is not that much. So in the context of Python, there's not too much going on there, but there are a lot of finicky things in Azure that you run into when you're deploying infrastructure, right? And my job is pretty much divided into 3 things. So teaching, and that would be videos, conferences, demos, live streams, things like that. 2, finding things to fix in Azure, which could be community feedback, could be social media, could be things that I encounter. And then 3, helping fix that stuff, whether that be actual engineering work or whether that be, just informing the teams, giving them the feedback, telling them, hey, I triaged this, found this, how about we do this, and kind of checking in on them, where's this at? That's kind of the 3 different areas that we focus on at work. So building these templates is a great way to find that, because you will have very specific, for example, this is a fast API container on Azure App Service. And you could also have fast API on App Service without a container, and you'll run into different behaviors because of that. And then using the container, you run into different behaviors because of that as well. And yeah, so this is that template here. The cool part, I think the part that I really needed to figure out the most was using these hooks here, these pre-deploy hooks, because I think it's something about I can't remember exactly, but it was building the container and pushing it to container registry. If you use, I think, Azure Container Apps, AZD can do it for you, but it doesn't have that same support for App Service. So yeah, figuring that to get that down correctly, get that working correctly. And then what else was kind of a pain here? Let me look at the Docker file. No, that's pretty straightforward. And the API, the app, yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay. Yeah, so that was the biggest thing. And then obviously just making sure your infrastructure code is following all best practices and things like that. Yeah, so that was what I spent doing February, and then the other thing that I spent doing in February, like personal, no, I don't want to say personal project, it's a work project, but project is, we'll take a look at, the Python OpenAI demos. So we did the 6-part live stream in March on the basics of Python and AI, and we ran it both in English and in Spanish. And then my colleague Pamela did all the English stuff and also like created the original content. And then I had to go and create the same, but for Spanish, right? So we have this Python OpenAI demos. And if you go in here, it essentially is kind of like a one-stop shop for you to learn how to, use the OpenAI package with a bunch of different exercises. So chat.py is like a simple script. And then you have chat stream is similar to that chat.py, but you're using streaming. And then you have history stream, and then like all the samples kind of build on each other, and they build in complexity as you follow them. And if you go to the Spanish folder, these are all the ones that I did. And let me tell you, this stuff was so difficult because the first couple of ones were pretty straightforward. I would say like understanding like how the chat.py, like that's pretty straightforward, right? There's not really anything crazy there. But once you start going into like really understanding the differences in, let me see, actually, another one that might be a good example. And this is go to repositories. There is another one that is called, it's like vector embedding. I think it's vector embeddings demos. I think it's this one. Yes. So once you start learning like the nitty gritty on like vector embeddings, like the math behind all that kind of stuff, that's where I remember sitting down and I was like so overwhelmed. I was reading, let me show you. As I picked up this book, AI Engineering, Pamela recommended it. And I remember going through the vector embeddings examples. Where is it actually? No, RAG and agents. There's like, hold on. RAG. Yeah, I remember going through like the chapter on embeddings, and I sat down and I'm like, I need to consider like a career change, like maybe moving to this team was a mistake. Like it was just like so many things, like so many doubts that you have. I'm sure like we all go through it. But then, what's funny is I'm like a very big, like I have a lot of faith, and I'm a big believer in just like listening to the signs that the universe gives you. So I remember it was like 7 p.m. and I was essentially working like 14, 16 hours those days because it was like getting work done and then also like upskilling in this stuff that I didn't know. And I remember it was like around 7 and I sat down on the couch. I was like so overwhelmed. It's like, this is just so much going on. There's just so many things that I don't know. At the beginning when you don't know something and you're like, oh, this is so difficult. So then I remember throwing on a YouTube video of someone who was just like live streaming coding, like one of the recordings. And I was like, I'm just going to watch this, chill for like half an hour and then get back to it. And then this was like a 2-hour live stream. And I like scrub through and I just select a random thing, just like a random moment in the video. And I hit play. And the person says, oh, I have just so much left to learn. But he said it with like an enthusiasm. And it was like the same stuff that I was feeling, but I gave it kind of like a negative connotation. Like, I'm just so overwhelmed. Like, there's so much that I need to learn. And this person was expressing the same, but with just like an ego or like a sense of like, yeah, there's like so much I need to learn. And then for me, that was the universe saying like, lock in, you got this. You're going to be good. So anyway, after that, I, created all the demos that we needed to create all the content and stuff that I needed to create for the series. And then that was essentially February, and then all of March kind of like working through that. And yeah, it was extremely successful. Like one of the most successful live streams that Microsoft has put on. we had like thousands of people watching every session, and the scores that we got at the end, because you get like, oh, did you find this helpful? Did you find this, that type of like survey as someone who watches it? We got really good. And yeah, I spent like a whole month just like every single day studying that kind of stuff. I thought I was going to lose my mind, to be honest. But anyway, that was February. February and March pretty much, because we did 6 sessions. We did, hold on, let's open another tab. We'll go aka.ms/python/ia/ we'll go here. We did 6 sessions. We did LLMs, embedding vectors, RAG, vision models, functions and outputs, and then security and quality. And you can find all of the recordings and slides if you want to go through. I think it's a pretty good curriculum to get the basics of AI and Python. And yeah, just know that it's okay to feel overwhelmed with the stuff. But once you get your foundation, like now picking up any other tool that like comes my way that is like AI related, I'm like, all right, I got this. This is not that difficult. But yeah, oh my goodness. But I will say, with fundamentals of programming and some like high schoolish, maybe first level of college math, because that's all I have, you're going to be able to do it. And then I highly recommend this book, AI Engineering. So good. Breaks down these concepts so well. And then, yeah, I have like a bunch of like notes and stuff like from this. And yeah, go through this. And it gives you a foundation to like work with any kind of tools, like MCPs coming out, agents coming out. Like you'll get everything that you need. Okay. Now let's move to, so that was February, March, April. April, I went on vacation for a little bit. I needed to relax. And then what else did I build in April? April, we had like a couple of things. So the Azure Terminal Copilot, I think that was one. And then we did, what else did I do? Is this the only one that I did? Azure Terminal Copilot. Okay, so this is a Python-based Azure CLI assistant that provides natural language processing capabilities for Azure commands. I think I did a video on this. But the Azure MCP server came out. And then I was like, this is super cool. I want to see how I can use this in a project. And this is one that I want to come back to and continue building on. But what you do is essentially here, for example, you type in, I typed in show my storage accounts. The model translates that into like a command. And it says here, translated to processing, show my storage accounts, translated to storage account list. And then it gives you the information of your storage accounts, right? Now, it's quite basic right now, but it was enough for me to get hands-on with Azure MCP, and then also using a local, so I have this model deployed locally, and I think I was using Ollama. And all this stuff, like I can already think of like, how can I improve all these things based on the stuff that I learned in March and February for that Python plus AI stuff. And yeah, I was able to build this thanks to the skills from that. So that was pretty much what I spent doing in April. There was one other thing that I did in April. I can't remember what it was though. Let me look through my GitHub. My GitHub is like my source of truth for this stuff. Let me see. There was one other thing it was just in my mind. No. Timestamper, no. Why can't I remember what remote MCP functions? No, that. I swear there's something that, BitNet. Yeah, I knew it. Here. Okay, the BitNet Fast API. This is it's funny because the things that I do are like the stuff that I learned in January, built for the stuff that I learned for February, built on top of the stuff for March, built on top of the stuff for April. So BitNet Fast API. This is using that template that I built in February, the Azure App Service Container Fast API thing. And I wanted to use the sidecar architecture and app service as a API server for BitNet, and then I could have like a chat application deployed on the container. It's the actual Python container, Fast API, and then the sidecar has like BitNet I think I did a video on this as well. I can't remember exactly, but the way this works is BitNet is an inference framework for 1-bit models, and you know, they're tiny models, and then you have it deployed on a sidecar, and then in Azure it's deployed, but your container where your API is will see the model locally. So it's very similar to if you're running something locally on Ollama or LLM Studio or something like that, but it is deployed in the cloud. And I think this thing, I got it working on, what was it? I can't remember which SKU. We'll go to, oh no, it's got to be an infra. We got to go to not parameters, resources device. I got it running on P1 V3. So I think it's around 90 USD. And I'm sure there's a lot more efficiencies I can do to get it running even on like a smaller SKU. But it's pretty neat. Like essentially for 90 USD a month, you can have like an LLM running. It's not necessarily an LLM. They're 1-bit models. They're not as big or as capable, but I think the future of like AI is getting niche, very capable, but small models running as close to your code as possible and on everyday infrastructure. While at the same time, there's going to be advancements in infrastructure for sure. I think, you know, leveraging what we have already and getting more out of what we have already, and then sort of co-designing models alongside infrastructure is kind of where the space is headed. Anyway, so this was pretty cool. I don't have this deployed, but yeah, this was cool. And then I went on vacation or came back from vacation. Okay, yeah. And then let's take a look at what I've been doing in May. I updated the resume challenge. The API is now using keyless auth. This is actually a pretty simple change. But I try to update this because I know a lot of people like reference it. So I've updated that. Oh, I also switched it to use flex consumption functions. I think I have like 2 always available, always ready, whatever they're called, instances. It's pretty neat that flex consumptions is an option now with Azure Functions. And yeah, because you get better performance, right? Now, or I guess less issues with cold starts, I would say. And then, let's take a look at what the the GitHub agent did. So it says here, this PR updates the README to reflect recent code changes and adds visual enhancements. All right, let's go here and then .NET 9, Azure Functions using isolated process. What else did it update? Okay, it updates to 9. But I think, hold on. I think it's not on 9 anymore. I think I switched it to 8. Let's go to API. Yeah, it's using 8. Why did it get 9? Okay, so hold on. This is actually a great example. We'll go to the PR. I'm going to, let's look at the other changes it did. Front-end resources. It just added a bunch of emojis. Back-end, customs DB. Okay, I did change. I removed the Cosmos DB binding, and instead we're just using like just straight up the SDK versus like any of the bindings. So that's correct. Allocation, improve security by eliminating. Okay, all right. So first, I'm just gonna tell it. Let's do review changes, request. Look at the API.cs. No, API.cs proj file. It is not .NET 9. Where did you .NET 9 from? Okay, request changes, submit review. And if you go back to the PR, it should understand. Yeah, it gives you a little emoji here, and it tells you, okay, I'm going to go work on this now. Anyway. Yeah, so anyway, after the Azure resume, what else happened this? Oh, the most recent function Cosmos inventory. No, inventory Cosmos, this one. We're going to do a series of videos on this one. This is going to be great because it's essentially going to teach you how to build a fully fleshed out API with Fast API and Cosmos DB and the Python SDK. And it's going to be great. It's going to be like a 4-part series video. And the goal is to have that. So that's a foundation. So later we can start building a more intelligent API. We're going to have like a bunch of like AI plugins or features. And we're going to have like vector storage and using those embeddings for like, I don't know, smart suggestions for products or something like that, right? So it's an inventory system right now. And the hardest part here, so there was 2 parts that were pretty hard. Was one, figuring out how to deploy flex consumption functions with Bicep, because I think it's still relatively new. The documentation is kind of all over the place, so I'll have a lot of updates to help the team along with that. And it's different than like deploying functions on like consumption plan. So figuring out how to do that correctly was a bit of a pain. The function stuff is actually in here. Host functions, right? It's a lot of Bicep, a lot of infrastructure as code. And then another hard part was really understanding data modeling correctly. Databases and data in general, I have more of an interest in lately, especially with AI comes into place, because without great data, your model's just going to, like the output of your models are just going to suffer. But if at the beginning you start with good data modeled correctly, it's just that goes through the pipeline and it improves the outputs that your models or your AI applications can have. So if we go into inventory API and then we go to models, like our product, this did not start like this. I read did a lot of research and understanding how to model something well for like a NoSQL database. In this case, Cosmos DB, NoSQL API. And I got to a point where, okay, this works very well. And essentially also getting it to a place where it follows best practices of like data modeling with Pydantic. So for example, we have like our product, right? Like we have a product, it has a name, a description, a category, a price, a SKU, and a quantity. And then we also have a product create. So when we need to create a product, we'll use this model. We won't use that one, right? When we need to make an update to a product, we'll use the product update. We won't use the other ones, right? And they all have like different fields. It's still the same item, right? Like for example, this is my product. This doesn't change, right? This doesn't change. But the way we work with it through these models and through code, like we have to use the sort of what Pydantic, which is a very popular Python package offers us, to like the best of its ability. When I need to return information on a product to a client, I use product response, right? And then this made it so easy. Once I figured this out and did well, it made it very easy to go like, okay, so we have our models. Now we need to create our CRUD implementations, right? So product CRUD. Okay. So with list products, okay, we're returning? What are we returning? Are we doing it correctly? And then from there, okay, when we create product, well, we know we need to use the product create. When we get a product by ID, we're probably going to need to use product response, right? Things like that. And then you move up one more level, which would be your routes, which is where your code for your actual API is. So for example, like when you go to /categories, right? Or when you go to like just / which would mean get all products, your response model would be like product list, right? And yeah, it just kind of makes a lot more sense versus just having one single model and like trying to make it work throughout the entire thing. Yeah, it'll make more sense in the videos, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, this was learning a lot of Cosmos DB and data modeling, and then also from the infrastructure as code part, understanding how to deploy Cosmos DB serverless and also Azure Functions in flex consumption. So that's going to be actually the focus for the rest of the month. There's only like a week left. And then June, I'll probably keep doing some data stuff. We'll see what happens in June. All right, that's it. Yeah, it's just, I find stuff that's relevant to work and then my interest and like go build that stuff. And then from there, any things that are pains in the neck, I report back and help try fix. Okay. Let's look at Claude. Let's see before we end this video. It says here, redundant files. You have duplicate role assignment files Cosmos DB role assignment and Cosmos DB data plane role bicep. That should be consolidated. Multiple files contain hard-coded role definition IDs. Okay. Storage account.bicep outputs and storage account key directly. Use managed identity instead. The user assigned identity in main.bicep is created but never used. Okay, cool. Standardized API versions across all. Okay, so anyway, you see how I fed it instructions and it went and sort of essentially created this report for me on how to improve my infrastructure as code stuff. So now I can go and kind of like take action. Either I can go and tell it, hey, okay, go implement everything you told me, or I can go and individually take action, right? I'll probably do the latter just because I want to double check some things. All right, that's it for this video. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.